Greetings, Tony Mobley here. Greetings and welcome to Conversations with Tony Mobley. On today's show, I should say, on today's conversation, we have Rabbi David Paskin. And thank you, Rabbi David, for being here with me today.
You
really
are so
appreciate
welcome. It's an
Thank
honor.
you, sir. This is episode 51 of Conversations with Tony Mobley. Why are we here? We are here because life has provided me the opportunity to have real conversation with real people. First, I want to thank the panel of friends and supporters for our great conversation last Wednesday, where we celebrated episode 50. And I want to thank the team behind Conversations with Tony Mobley. So why are we here? We're here to have real conversations. We hope to help others with these conversations. But again, and I know I sound redundant, I need your help. I need your help because I need you to go to conversationswithtonymobley.com. The reason why I want you to go to my website and register is so that you can participate in our chat. It's called Mukana. And there you can ask your questions, and your questions can be voted up and down. That's right. You have an opportunity to ask your questions, and your questions can be voted on. If you like this and past conversations, I ask that you like and subscribe. Set that bell to all notifications to be reminded of upcoming conversations. And so, now we are going to have our very first question for Rabbi David. And the question is, who is Rabbi David?
I know you prepped me that this was going to be the first question, but that's a really tough one, isn't it? For anyone to answer, probably. Who's Rabbi David? I'm a father of 4 girls. A husband, a rabbi, a musician, and a Jewish futurist. I'm much less interested in what's happening right now, and much more interested in what's going to come, what's possible, what lies just beyond the horizon. So I try and bring all of those pieces of who I am together to create a whole. I'm pretty sure I don't accomplish that very well, but I still have very fractured parts of who I am. But really all of those, the father, the rabbi, the musician, the Jewish futurist.
Thank you so much for that answer. What are some things that your parents taught you that you're currently using today?
You had shared this question with me beforehand, Tony, and I almost asked you not to ask it. But then I decided, you know what? This is about honest, open conversations tonight. And so I said, you know what? I'm gonna let it be. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for that question because I come from a very broken home. Unfortunately, it was an abusive home, and I've had many divorces between my parents, and I haven't spoken to my father in many, many years. I'm very close with my mother, thank God, who's an amazing, amazing woman. She's probably watching now, and she's the most tech savvy, grandmother of 4 kids, or actually 6 she has, but that I've ever known. But I doubt she's figured out how to get into Mukana. So she's probably not going to ask a question, but she's amazing. I guess if I had to say what I've learned from her is to always learn, is to keep learning. Actually, 2 things. One is to always learn. She learns every day. She takes online classes with everybody you can imagine. It's inspiring to see how dedicated she is to her learning and her reading and her discovery of herself and the world around her. So that would be one thing. I think the other thing is, which I've already learned, is be okay with being alone. that there's something very beautiful about knowing how to be alone and being happy and healthy in your solitude and deriving joy and blessing from that space. She was married twice, neither marriage was healthy, and she's been alone for many, many years with a life partner, and she is just one of the most inspiring people I know, because she's mastered this skill of knowing how to really appreciate being alone and to flourish there. So I'm blessed that I'm not alone. I have my wife and my kids and all of that. But I've also learned from her that it's okay to be alone, that can be a blessing as well.
Well, I want to say thank you so much for being transparent. And I think that maybe the fact that your circumstances are what they are have made you be even more assertive about being a good father. I just know from the interactions and the things that you've said that you are a good father. And so again, thank you so much for sharing that. And if I had known, I probably would not have asked.
No,
But
I'm glad you did. Look, we should, this conversation is all going to be in part, at least, about faith to a certain extent. And so there are a couple of things that I carry with me. One is that the pains that we've had in our lives, the struggles that we've gone through or are still going through, they're a part of who we are, and we shouldn't want to push them out of view. We should learn how to bring them in and allow them to be a part of ourselves without them overwhelming us, without them sort of taking over or taking power away from the totality of who we are. They are not the totality, but they are a part of who we are. So I don't want to hide from those difficult things in my life. And I also think that I'm one of those crazy people that believes that everything happens for a reason. Now, and I'll just, if it's okay, I'll give you a quick analogy. So
sure.
I don't know, when I was growing up, you remember those station wagons where the back seat was reversed? So you could sit in the back seat and look out the back window. So we had one of those station wagons. Yeah. And, we'd get into the car, we'd pile into the car. I'd be sitting in that back seat, and my father would be driving us somewhere. And I knew where we were going. We're going to a restaurant. We're going to I don't know wherever, the mall. I knew what our destination was, but I had no idea how he was going to get us there. I didn't know if we were going to take a right or a left, or if there would be a pothole, or if we had to stop and get gas. And I didn't care. I was much too busy looking out the back window, trying to get the trucks to honk their horns and counting the trees along the road. And I look at life in the same way, that I'm sitting in the back seat of the car that's driving me through life, and God is driving. Now, I know where God's going to get me. I know what the destination is, but I have no idea how I'm going to get there. And honestly, I don't really care, because I want to count the trees, and I want to try and get the trucks to honk their horns. I just trust God to get me where I need to go. And along the way, there are going to be those potholes. There are going to be those, we may have to do a hairpin turn to avoid a crash. And all of those things are there for a reason. And again, I don't know what the reason is, but I choose to believe in that rather than to believe in chaos. So even the bad stuff, it happens. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of who all of us are. And if we're lucky, if we're blessed, we can learn from that.
And it's kind of funny in a way that the reason that we are having this conversation, in part, the reason that we're having this conversation is because 2 years ago, this time, I was going through my cancer journey. And on Sunday, June 12th, I rang that bell.
Oh, my goodness.
And so had it not been for the cancer journey, I probably would not have been tuning into office hours. Hence, I would not have been trying to help a small church in Macon, Georgia, figure out how to get through the pandemic and ask tons and tons of questions that probably seemed kind of simple to that community, but they were kind enough to give me some answers, and we have been able to make some headway. But I'm never um, without thankfulness. And it probably sounds crazy to say thankfulness for cancer, in that I was a person who was kind of floundering, and it gave me focus, and it also made me extremely proactive, and not a person who in the past would kind of put things off. I don't put things off. I try to be single-minded and focus on the things that that I understand in my faith walk, that requires me to keep moving and keep trying to get better. But we'll get into that much further down the line in this conversation.
Yeah, can I just say, Tony, I just want to reflect back, if it's okay, that I was the chaplain, the Jewish chaplain at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute for 10 years up in Boston. And a lot of the folks there who were going through cancer had similar reactions to it. There's nothing good about cancer. Cancer sucks. And there is an opening of the eyes. There's an opening of the heart that happens whenever we face tragedy. The reason I was at Dana-Farber is because we just actually celebrated the 20th year. I mentioned I had 4 daughters. One of them died of a brain tumor when she was 2 years old, 20 years ago. And some people, when they face something like that, they want to sort of run away from anything that reminds them of it. I ran toward it. She was treated at Dana-Farber, and I wanted to be there. And I'm not thankful that my daughter passed away. And I have 2 other daughters now that I wouldn't have had she not passed away. So everything happens, I believe, for a reason. And again, I don't understand it. I don't really want to understand it. I just want to keep counting the trees.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about office hours. So what has office hours meant to you?
I've joked about rabbinical school was, to become a rabbi, it's post-college, you go for it's a 5-year program. It's like a doctorate, except you don't get a doctorate. And I've joked that the one thing that I learned in rabbinical school is how little I know and how much more there is to know. And I feel like that pretty much every day that I'm in office hours or that I'm watching office hours. There's so much I don't know. The good news is I don't have to know it, because I don't really live in that world 100% of the time. I enjoy this work. I'm thriving in it, but no one is going to expect me to create a 3D model for them. For that, they're going to call Alex or someone else. So for me, it's been a way to give expression to something that I love, that I didn't know I could really give expression to. I was always a geek. I loved my devices and my phones and my computers, but I didn't realize that I could share that in a meaningful way with others. And what I mean by meaningful is in a way that actually contributes to society. It would be one thing for you and I and the other folks in office hours to hang out and talk about all the latest gear that we have, and to just sort of schmooze about the latest, greatest tool or tip. But we're not doing it just for ourselves. We're actually doing it to help others. And there's something so beautiful and magical about that. And I didn't I never saw myself being able to take something that I just sort of enjoy and love and join with other people and turn that into something that is genuinely beneficial. And office hours has helped me do that. And it has reminded me, as I said before, that there is so much to learn. There is so much to learn. And that, to me, that's probably the greatest part of the whole thing, is that, oh my goodness, I will never, ever be done learning. And that's just fantastic.
So I want you to explain what office hours is as if you were explaining it to one of your parishioners.
Yeah. I'm not sure this is the best explanation, but it's the most honest explanation. It's free tech help. that's what I tell. I say, I say to them, before I am going live, or if I need to check my sound levels, or if I need feedback, if I need to set something up and I don't know how to do it, I just either ask the question in office hours or I jump into after hours. And no one, other than offering kindness and some gratitude, no one expects anything from me. There's no cost for this support that I'm getting. It's given freely. It's given with love and support and compassion and all those other things. And because the folks that I find myself consulting with and supporting, they're really not in the office hours world at all. I mean, I think that, they would listen to the first 5 minutes and they would shut down, just because that's not their world. To know that there is a resource that's available to them, even a resource that may be high above their current skill level, but a resource nonetheless that's available to them, is again, it's a gift. And so that's actually how I usually describe it. To other people, it is the best resource for tech support, for audio, for video, for web, for any of that. For me, it's a community. It's a group of folks that I will probably never meet in person. And yet I feel like I hang out with them all the time. It's fantastic. It's funny because, like Alex, what I've discovered about myself, I'm speaking, of course, about Alex Lindsay, who's the founder and the host of it. What I've discovered about myself is that I really don't like being around people, that I'm much more comfortable here in my office in front of a camera. And so this has allowed me to create community in an even more comfortable way for me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Before we move on, and Dr. Clark has a question for us, can you explain or describe the logo that we're seeing in your background?
Yeah. So here, I'll jump out of frame for a second so it zooms in, or not zooms in, it focuses in. So that's my rock and roll rabbi logo. So I'm in addition to, I said before, I'm a musician. And so when I was younger and had more energy and things like that, I did a lot of performing and touring, and I recorded a number of albums. I have 6 albums that are actually 7, I guess. Sorry, I thought it was 6. I have 7 albums that I've recorded, and they're on all the major streaming sites and all that other good stuff. And I'm not sure if anyone else dubbed me this. I may have given myself the name, but I'm the rock and roll rabbi. So people grab my music at rockandrollrabbi.com, and I really feel, for me, I'll just speak personally. For me personally, the single most important part that faith should play in our lives is to bring joy. And because there are so many reasons to be sad. There are so many reasons to be worried, to be frustrated, to be depressed, to be concerned. We desperately need joy. And so I would sit in temple and services, and I'd hear some of the dirge-like tunes that they would use for some of the prayers. And it wasn't bringing me joy. So I said, you know what, we got to kick this up a notch. So I started writing, and I have a lot of liturgical music and educational music, and it's all kind of it's not, I mean, it's not Green Day or Kiss, but it's, you know, it's more folk rock, more, you know, James Taylor, that kind of thing. But I love it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Okay, well, great. Um, and I know you haven't prepared for anything, but if by the end of this conversation, if you want to share some of your music, I would
I
not
could
have a
hook you up.
problem.
I could hook you up with something. Sure.
All
Sure.
right, great. So Dr. Clark from Tempe, Arizona asked, how have lessons learned at Camp Grossman applied elsewhere in your life and work?
This is crazy. All right, Chris, do I know you from Camp Grossman? I'm terrible with names. Oh my gosh, Camp Grossman. So one of the things that I did for years and years and years is I worked at summer camps. I worked at both day camps and overnight camps. So I was at Camp Herzl in Wisconsin, Camp Sabra in Missouri, um, Camp Ramah Palmer in Massachusetts, Camp Grossman in Massachusetts. It's crazy that this is a question about Camp Grossman. Camp Grossman's a day camp, a Jewish day camp, run by the JCC, the Jewish Community Center up in Boston. And I was there for 10 years as their music guy. I called myself the Rosh Ruach. So the word Rosh means head, but it also means the leader of. So, you know, if you're the leader of a particular bunk, you would be Rosh Bunk 3 or Rosh Bunk 4, something like that. So Rosh means in charge of or leader of. The word Ruach is a very, very popular Hebrew word. It means, it's most often translated as spirit or spiritual. So, you know, kind of like the spirit. Rosh Ruach could be like the spiritual leader. But Ruach also means air. So Rosh Ruach either meant spiritual leader or airhead, one of the two. That's who I was. I was the airheaded spiritual leader of Camp Grossman. And it, oh my God, it was awesome. It was awesome. And here's the lesson that I learned at Camp Grossman. I love kids. I love kids. And I was a congregational rabbi for 20 years. So I was the guy up in the pulpit giving the sermons and doing all the life cycle events. And in the summers, I would do camp because that was my happy place. And now I've transitioned out of pulpit life and I'm doing really just educational work with children. And boy, I'm not sure what I was waiting for. I should have learned that lesson earlier. There's something so honest and raw and what's the word? Authentic about children that we tend to lose as adults. We get caught up in just garbage and silliness. You know, I don't know. And children, when there's a cool leaf, that's the most important thing in the world. And they're right. That should be the most important thing in the world, that leaf. And the awe that I have for that leaf and the gratitude that I have for the creator of that leaf, whether you want that to be God or science or whatever it is, it's awesome. And we need to learn from children to be there, to be in that awesomeness and to be able to play and have fun and make mistakes and fall down and get hurt and pick ourselves back up, and all those vital lessons that children learn, I think we've lost as adults. And so Camp Grossman reminded me that that's where I need to be. I need to be in that space, learning and growing and discovering and failing and then trying to succeed again.
Thank you, Dr. Clark, for that great question. Dr. Clark is back again. What role does personal charisma play in your success as an influential leader, mentor, parent? How early in your life did charisma begin to make a difference?
I wouldn't call myself influential by any stretch, but I'll tell you exactly. I don't know the date, but I know exactly when I started to engage with music, which I think was probably the real beginning of any sort of charisma that I may have. I was in junior high or high school, and I was at a youth group convention. Now, when you're at a youth group convention, this is a Jewish youth group convention, yes, there are classes and yes, there are activities, but that's really not why you go as a teenager. You go because there are girls that are going to be there or boys that are going to be there. And I was, without a doubt, the last choice for anybody. I just, I would not have been on anyone's list of top 10 guys to hang out with. So I was a little desperate. Well, there was this gentleman there was a colleague of mine, actually, who just passed away. Heavy-set guy, bald, and played guitar. And all the girls were hanging out by him. And I said, I've got to learn that instrument. So I went home, I bought myself an Ovation guitar, and I got the VHS tape of Eric Clapton Unplugged on MTV, and I watched it over and over and over again until I could play guitar. And I think that that was probably the beginning. What's interesting about the guitar is that in some ways it's a shield. Guitarists can kind of hide behind their guitar a little bit. I'm much less comfortable performing or doing anything when I don't have my guitar in front of me. It's much more comfortable when I have that something for my hands to do, maybe, or maybe it is more of a shield. But that was a really important turning point for me in how I present myself in the world. And now I'm just I may be a showman, but I have no interest in putting on a show. I'm just, this is who I am, and with all of my foibles, and I have a ton of them, but I found that I do the best leadership. I'm my best leader or my best performer or my best educator when I am fully there and I'm fully myself. When I'm trying to be something else, oftentimes it falls flat. But when I'm just having fun and putting myself out there, that's when I find that I do my best work. So that's, if I have charisma, that's it. Probably started with that, trying to get the girls, and it probably now is in part because that's just who I want to be. I want to have fun.
Well, just so you know, you do.
Thank you.
So, just so you know. The next question is, how has your interactions with houses of worship changed since COVID-19?
Before COVID hit, other than the work that I was doing one-on-one with congregations, either as their rabbi or their educator, I didn't have a lot of interactions with lots of communities. I had some, if I went there to do a concert or if I went there as a scholar in residence to speak, but I didn't have ongoing relationships with communities. And when COVID hit, again, because I just love this stuff, I don't have any special skills necessarily in technology. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just not afraid to press all the buttons until, what I want to happen happens. Because of that, because I'm a little fearless in that respect, and because I wanted us to do well. I wanted us to keep sharing our learning and our faith and our teachings. I wanted it. Judaism has been so good to me, and it's been so rich for me, and faith in general has been so rich for me. I need to shout it from the rooftops. I want everyone to know about it, and I want us to do that well. And so I took my sort of love of technology and my somewhat abilities at that, and wanting us to do it well. And then I looked at the Jewish world, and I saw that a lot of us weren't doing it well. Not to anyone's fault, by the way. I mean, I don't hold anyone accountable for not doing it well. Certainly not in the beginning. This was hard and scary, and none of us had any clue what we were doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is I kind of created this Torah Tech Guy thing that summer, I guess. And I slowly started helping people figure out, offering workshops and consulting with temples and synagogues around the country, and religious leaders also, and slowly tried to help them figure out how to do this well, how to take what they know and love and do it well. I will say that every time I had the honor of working with a community up until today, I learn more out of that interaction, I'm sure, than I give. And what I offer after each interaction changes and is better because of what I've learned. I look back now, I'm sure we've all done this actually, Tony, I'm sure you've done this, that we look back at the first videos that we did, or, the first time we showed up in office hours and the crummy video or the terrible lighting or whatever. I mean, I was using a green screen with virtual backgrounds and it wasn't lit. Like it's just embarrassing to think what I was doing back then, but thank goodness, like we grow every day. We get to do better every day. And that's the mindset that I'm trying to share with Jewish communities, is that we aren't in panic mode anymore. This is here to stay, and we can do it well. And it doesn't have to, so many temples, I don't know if this, I'd be curious actually to hear if you found this with churches. So many temples went out and felt the need to spend tens of thousands of dollars on fancy equipment and all that. You don't need to do that. You just don't need to do that to do this well. You have to spend some money. I'm not suggesting you can do it for free, but, and the other thing, then I'll stop talking. By the way, you all should know who are watching. I told Tony beforehand that if we don't have a lot of questions, don't worry, because I'm a rabbi. I'm trained to talk forever. So you need to just cut me off, Tony, if I'm going on too long. But the only other thing I want to share is
you are fine.
Okay, thank you. Is that another piece that I've now been trying to share with congregations and communities is that we need to stop looking at digital connection, digital engagement, the streaming and multicasting. We have to stop thinking of all of those as things that we're doing in response to a tragedy, and instead start thinking about them as opportunities for growth. We will never do our best work if we see these tools as we had to, or we have to. But if instead we can flip that and say, look what we get, look at the audiences that we can reach, look at the creative ways that we can put content out there, look at the dynamic ways that we can engage with people in digital space. If we think of this as the get-tos instead of the have-tos, then I think there's real promise for communities of faith in using these tools, if they're open to always growing and always changing with them.
I guess it's important for me to share a little story. So we know most of us that are office hours, that my journey on office hours began with me trying to help a community of believers in Macon, Georgia. And because I was trying to help that community in Macon, Georgia, navigate not being able to be in person, we got on Zoom. And so as of the beginning of last month, we started posting to YouTube. So I want to let the world know, Miracle Bible Way Church, Macon, Georgia, pastored by Patsy Willis, 93 years old, has a YouTube channel. Excuse me. And there are five different service sermons that are there, along with a Easter skit. And so I would encourage anyone who's interested to go to the Miracle Bible Way YouTube channel. And these are very seasoned adults who are participating in this. And I think, based on where we started, it is absolutely amazing where we are right now. So I would encourage those to, and so that I'm only mentioning this is because I think this is an example, Rabbi David, that there was not a lot of interest in maneuvering and doing the technology and the huge costs, by office hour standards to get started. We didn't have that as a factor. And I would say that I think that it looks pretty good. We had my producer, Clark Lopez Waterman, come in and do an audit of where we were, and we tried to get better. At the end of last year, he came in and he did an audit, and it was extremely helpful and encouraging to those members, um, to see somebody outside of the community of faith and, Tony Mobley, the broken record about doing this and doing that. And so it was really great. But I just wanted to share that because I think it's important for any house of worship that may be listening, or even, and listen, the things that we're talking about in terms of houses of worship can be applied to teachers and educators. The tools that we're using, the things that we're doing, they can be used in the classroom. And so don't minimize that opportunity to be able to utilize those things.
Tony, early on, we were talking about finding the blessing, in everything. And I think that just to build on what you were just saying, one of the blessings that I really hope we do find out of what we've been going through for the past 2 years is not only how do we do digital worship, digital learning, all this stuff well, but also how can doing it well in digital space help us transform what we're doing in physical space? Because I'll tell you, and look, I'm a Jew, I'm a rabbi, I love to pray, I love to go to temple. It can be really boring. It just can be. It can be. Here's how I think of it, like a football game. So in a football game, you've got 50,000 people in the stands who really need exercise, watching 50 people on the field who really don't need exercise. When you go to temple, you got 20 or 200 people in the pews who really need spiritual exercise, watching 2 people, the rabbi and the cantor, who really don't need spiritual exercise. It unfortunately has become a spectator sport, and that's not the way prayer is supposed to be. Prayer is supposed to be, if you go to you want to know how to pray, go to a gospel church, go to a Baptist, right? That they know how to pray. We Jews, we've kind of forgotten, to be perfectly honest with you. It's so tepid, it's so sort of lukewarm, that I'm hoping that the ways that we've been pushed and pulled and challenged in translating meaningful experiences into digital space, I hope that will translate back. I hope that will help us back in our physical spaces to make the services and the learning more engaging, more dynamic, more creative, more joyful. Because I think we need that. Religious communities around the world they ain't growing. And that's in large part, I think, because they don't want to buy what we're selling. So we need to, we need to start changing our manufacturing of what we're putting out there, or sell something that's going to grab their attention, because God's worth it.
Absolutely. Let's see. How to help virtual ministries continue to get better.
How do we help them continue to get better? Well, I'll tell you what. So I'm working with 4 communities, 4 congregations in New Jersey right now. By the way, I forgot to mention, I've driven through Macon a whole bunch of times, because the camp that I used to go to is in, oh my goodness, what's it called? Clayton, Georgia. And to get from Clayton to Boca, where I live, you have to kind of go through Macon. So next time I drive through, I'll say hi.
Okay.
But I'm working with 4 congregations in New Jersey right now. And what I'm doing with them is I started by suggesting that technology isn't just about screens and lenses and microphone capsules. Technology is all the tools that help us advance. Chairs are technology. Books are technology. So for all the communities that are sort of afraid of bringing technology into their sanctuaries, they need to first realize there's a lot of technology already there. It may not be digital technology, but there's already a lot of technology there. So with these communities, what we're doing is we're doing a 3-part training, and I'm using imagery actually from the Bible. So I know you know the story of the Israelites, that they were freed from slavery in Egypt,
Hmm.
and then they on their way out, they stopped at Mount Sinai, and that's where God revealed God's self to everyone, and they got the Ten Commandments, right? So
Hmm.
after that, they were going to the Promised Land. They're going to Israel, but they didn't go the direct route. The direct route would have taken a few days, right? Maybe a week or two. I don't know. They went the circuitous route. It took 40 years. So we've got this mountain experience of Mount Sinai, of
Hmm.
revelation. Then you've got 40 years of wandering, and then you've got finally the Promised Land. So what I'm doing with them is I'm asking them to go on that very journey with me. And I'm asking them, what are your Sinai moments? What are the foundational pieces? Very much like what Simon Sinek calls, what is your why? What are the foundational Sinai pieces of who you are as a community? That if these changed, it would redefine who you are as a community. And those aren't just what was your community built on, but also what is it built on now? Then we're talking about, so that's the Sinai piece. Then we're doing the journey piece. So, what are the pain points along the way? One of the things the Israelites were known for as they did that journey is they kvetched, they complained all the time. So let's think about how people in your community complain. What do they complain about? How do you respond to those complaints? What does change look like? What does process look like in your community? And then finally, the last piece is going to be, what is your promised land? What's your goal? Where do you want to be in 5 years? No restrictions, no limitations. How do you imagine yourself? Then what we're going to do is we're going to say, all right, here's where we were, right? This is foundational.
Hmm.
Here's how we know we travel through the wilderness, the pain points, the struggles, the change, the challenges. And here's how we know and here's where we want to be. What are the technologies that will help us in that journey? How can we use technology? Again, not just digital technology, but the idea of technology, sort of not futuristic, forgive me, a future thinking or a forward thinking mindset, a growth mindset, as opposed to a fixed mindset. How can we use that to help us on this journey? So that's I think more than what camera do you need to use, or how do you get good audio, that is vital, don't get me wrong, but I think more than that, we need to, on a fundamental level, think differently about what it means to engage with people, what it means to build community, what it means to have membership or partnership or dues, or all the things that have made synagogues and temples really successful for the past, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 years. We're in a different time now. And so we need to be asking some fundamental questions. And I'm using that sort of biblical journey that the Israelites took to help us guide our way there.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll probably have another conversation about that offline.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Clark Lopez Waterman asked, when did you know you wanted to be a rabbi, and how did you know?
Hey, Talalak. Yeah, I love this question. I knew it at about 12 years old. So how I knew. I had mentioned earlier that I come from a bit of a broken home. And I needed to escape from that home. I needed to get out. It wasn't healthy. It wasn't safe. And when people need to escape dangerous or uncomfortable situations, sometimes they turn to drugs or alcohol. I turned to my temple. I have no idea why, but I turned to my synagogue. And this was in St. Louis at the time, St. Louis, Missouri. And I ended up spending all of my free time in my synagogue. I went to pray at 3 different synagogues. I'd spend weekends at 2 of the Orthodox synagogues. I'd go to Hebrew high school at the Reform. I mean, I just, every moment I had, I was in these synagogues. There's a custom on the Sabbath, on the Jewish Sabbath, that you don't drive because you're not supposed to create a fire. And my father certainly wasn't going to drive me to synagogue. So I would walk. It was a 2-hour walk. I remember I had to walk on the highway in order to get there, but I would walk every Saturday morning, 2 hours to get to the temple. And so in many ways, Judaism saved me from the pain in my life. And then I was about 12 or 13, maybe 14. I think it was before I was 13. And I realized how amazing it was, what a gift Judaism and the Jewish community and my temple had been to me. And I wanted to, as I said before, I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I wanted to tell everybody about how precious this is. And I looked at the rabbi or the rabbis who were around me, and they were doing a pretty piss poor job of doing that. They just weren't, they didn't have the hype. They didn't have the energy. They didn't have the joy. And I thought, well, I could do it better than they are. So I decided to be a rabbi. It really is because it's just so sweet. It's so good believing in something. I'm not at all interested in, did it actually happen or fact? And I'm not interested. Faith, it does not tell you how something happened. It tells you why something happened. They answer different questions. So it's unimportant to me if Moses actually split the sea. What's important to me is that I believe that Moses split the sea, that's a part of my faith, and that I learn lessons about how I should live in my own life, that I shouldn't be afraid to take risks, that I shouldn't wait and just be a follower, that I should be a leader, right? It's so sweet that I just want to share that with everyone. And so that's why I became a rabbi.
Wow. This was not necessarily a conversation about celebrating the goodness of God, but it's kind of it's kind of turned into that. And this is an interesting week for us here. My wife started chemo on Monday, and she was able to get her needle out today, and she's doing very well.
God bless.
First treatment, and about a month back, she had most of all of the cancerous materials removed through surgery, and we are in a place where we are celebrating the testimony that she will have. And I will say that it's hard for me because it is in fact her testimony. And I have my testimony, but she has her testimony. And there are so many parallels that I could share that are sort of related to the things that you've just shared about being in church, how important being in the synagogue was to you, and how it was sort of the anchor for you being able to survive your upbringing. And I have a similar story in terms of, and I've shared it before, and I'll be real quick with it. I had a reputation of being a very good athlete, but I would often have to give up playing with the guys because I had to go to church. And they would tease me, call me church boy. And I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. And at the time that I grew up, it is, I guess, reflective of some of the major cities that things are going on right now. So it was not a very safe place to live. And there were a lot of people who were my age that did not reach adulthood. And it was when a gun was pulled on me when I was about 14 years old, and I was looking at that gun, and they said they wanted everything that I had. And God sent an angel who said, "Don't bother church boy. Don't bother church boy, leave him alone. As a matter of fact, if you see him, go the other way. And so it's things like that, because that could have been the end of my life. 14, 15 years old, so many people that I grew up with did not make it to 18. And then all of the journeys that I've had throughout my life, and most recently the cancer journey. And I know that there is, a God. I know that there is a God, and I know that he's worthy of service and worthy of praise. And I know that we had not planned to talk about that, but
no,
it's impossible for me, based on where I am, to ignore that. We're going to talk about how technology is helpful to communities and houses of worship, but it's important, I guess, to have the why you want to do it. And so the why is because there is a God who is worthy of celebrating, and it's important to let as many people know about that God as possible.
And for those people for whom the word God even is uncomfortable, or define God. How my brother is a he has a postdoc in artificial intelligence. He works at Google. He's worked there for a long time. I don't understand anything that he does. He at one point shared his postdoc with me, and I got to his name, and then I said, okay, I don't understand it anymore. And he and I always debate and argue about faith and what have you. And we always end up at 3 words: I don't know. Right? Every debate we have, every discussion we have, we can go on and on and on. We always end up at I don't know. I call I don't know God. He calls I don't know science hasn't discovered it yet. Okay. It's the same I don't know. We just call it different things. So if you are watching and God isn't your language, that's cool, right? With me, that's cool. Call it gratitude, call it awe, call it joy, call it nature, call it whatever, Gaia, right? Whatever you want to call it, there is something worth celebrating in this life, in this world. There is something worth being grateful for, having awe for. There is something bigger than me, even if that is just you and me together. That's enough, right?
Absolutely.
Whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Tlalak is back again. As a custodian of a particular faith, how do you find the biggest lines of commonality with all faiths?
Well, the question is a tricky one, because I think when people talk about all faiths, let me change that. When I talk about all faiths, when I would use, if I'm having a conversation, I would say, oh, all people of faith. I usually only mean Muslims, Jews, and Christians. And of course, there are hundreds of other faiths out there that I know nothing about. And so I don't want to say all faiths, but I certainly have tried to spend some time finding those lines of commonality with the 3 Abrahamic faiths of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. And the obvious, I was having this discussion with my daughter the other day, actually, because she couldn't understand the idea of the Trinity, and how the Trinity is still, that God is still one, even within the Trinity. We're trying to have this conversation about how all the Abrahamic faiths, we all believe in one God. We are all Abraham was the first monotheists, right? We are the 3 monotheistic religions. So, but that within monotheism, within that oneness, there is multiplicity. Just like within me, there is rabbi and father and teacher, and right? There is multiplicity within all of us. So I think for the 3 Abrahamic faiths, that tension between unity and multiplicity, that beautiful, holy tension that I think all the faiths struggle with, or not struggle, we don't struggle with it, but all the faiths celebrate to a certain extent. That's an important line for me. And I think another important line of commonality is social justice. And it is so upsetting when I hear people using religion to support actions or behaviors or language that isn't just. And lots of people do it. But fundamentally, whether it's the Torah or the Gospels or the Quran, they are all fundamentally about justice. And if we can't share that as a common thread, as something that binds us together as brothers and sisters and cousins, then I'm not sure there's anything worth binding us together. That should be what it's all about, justice.
Thank you for that. I do want to lift up Dean Lawrence Edward Carter, Morehouse Dean of the Chapel, Reverend Dr. Aaron L. Parker, Roswell Francis Jackson. And I lift up these three names because they were instrumental in me forming my ecumenical outlook on religion and faith. I lift them up because having gone to a Catholic prep school, all of this juggling of growing up in a Pentecostal Baptist church, Baptist Pentecostal, then all of the other experiences that I've had, I had to navigate this world religion kind of point of view, and they helped me navigate it. They helped me navigate it very well, and so I thank them and I thank you for having this conversation with a Baptist Pentecostal guy about technology and faith.
Isn't that fantastic? I mean, just saying what you just said, how beautiful is that? How beautiful is that? You know, that technology is what's bringing the faiths together. I love that.
It is a fantastic experience. Again, thank you so much. And so we have a question from Laura Thompson. I offer that Clarke's third law states any sufficient advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And there is another definition for your I don't know.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think you're right, Laura.
I love that. I love that. But I did a workshop last week, Laura, with Andy Carluccio. We were presenting together to Ecamm is the software solution that I use for streaming. And so we were doing a Zoom workshop for the Ecamm community about how to use Zoom ISO. And just the idea that I was presenting with Andy Carluccio still boggles my mind a little bit. I mean, that's insane, because what he does is magic. It just is. Right. It doesn't make any earthly sense that he's able to do what he does. So I think you're right. Sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And you're right. And for some people, that is the I don't know. And that's okay to me. There's a beautiful prayer that I remember from my childhood that we used to read. It was it wasn't even a prayer, I guess. It was an English reading. I only remember the first line, but it went something like, love me, says God, or curse me, says God. No, I'm sorry. Bless me, says God, or curse me, says God. Bless me or curse me, and I'll know that you love me. But if you look at the stars and yawn, and then it went on, and that's all I remember from it. What I love about that is that God doesn't care how you imagine God. God doesn't care if you're happy or angry or sad or otherwise. God cares that you care. God just wants you to care. God just wants you to have an I don't know. That's all God asks. Just be able to say, I don't know. That's enough. So and magic is a beautiful way of imagining that also. That's awesome, Laura.
Thank you, Laura, for that great question. Um, can we talk about different applications you use with houses of worship? And you just lifted up eCam. What else do you want to share with us?
Yeah, I think that probably like every market, I have found three sort of stratifications. There's the folks who are like Central Synagogue out of New York, right? They have a full blown tech team that run, I mean, with multiple people, and I have no idea what they're using. I would imagine vMix, but I mean, it's like a TV production setup. It's unbelievable. There's that group. Then there's the next group that's probably where I would fall. They're using Ecamm or vMix or OBS or one of these streaming platforms, maybe using an ATEM in conjunction with that. They probably have a couple of different cameras and things like that. It's a fairly good production. And then there's the folks that they're just hitting Zoom. They're just going out to Zoom. I would say that in the Jewish world, I am always trying to push people towards Zoom, away from streaming to YouTube or Facebook. Not away from that, but don't exclusively stream to YouTube or Facebook. I always push people into Zoom because, again, for me, prayer learning is supposed to be an interactive, full contact sport. And if I, as a leader, can't see you and can't react to you and respond to you in real time, then that creates a disconnect. Then all you're doing is watching me put on a show. And that's not the kind of experience that I want to create. And that's not the kind of experience that I think benefits synagogues. So I'm always encouraging synagogues, use as many tools, software and hardware, as you can to promote engagement. Zoom is number one amongst them. Using tools like Slido or Mentimeter, or if you really want to go crazy, Mukana, all of these tools that really get people to be a part of co-creating the experience, not just passively receiving the experience. Those are the software pieces that I want to encourage synagogues and congregations to use.
So can you share, if people are watching and they didn't understand a lot of what you just shared,
Sorry.
if they wanted to ask, no, it's okay. We can't answer every question that may come up while people are watching. So can you share where they can go to ask questions about the things that you've already shared?
Yeah. Thank you for the plug. I appreciate that. So I have a website called TorahTechGuy.com, and you can go here. Torah, by the way, is the Hebrew word for the Bible, Torah. And you can ask questions. I got some trainings here. I've got a whole video library here. And I actually have both pages for sort of the gear that I suggest, but also a bunch of the apps that I use and that I recommend. So you can see right up at the top there, I've got Ecamm Live and I've got Zoom. I've become a big fan of Canva, Loopback, and then a lot of these are also educational tools, like WordWall is fantastic for building games, interactive games. Kahoot, everyone knows Kahoot and loves playing Kahoot. If you're a teacher, here's Slido. I also love Padlet, which is a lot of fun, and Mentimeter. Whiteboard.fi is a really fun one. If you're a teacher and you have multiple students, every student gets their own digital whiteboard and you can see all of them. So I got a lot of apps here that I love and that I use. And if anyone needs any support or help with any of this stuff, I'm always happy to help at TorahTechGuy.com.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi David, for sharing that. And I encourage anyone who has questions to reach out to him. He is willing to help you. He is really sincere and authentic and willing to help you. So if you have questions, feel free to ask. Let's talk about hardware you're using in houses of worship. Before we talk about hardware, let's talk about your hardware. What are you using tonight?
So I've got kind of a battle station here. The single most important piece of technology that I'm using is my desk. It's my sit stand desk. I love this thing. I literally have everything clamped to this desk. And whenever I teach or I'm leading a service or I'm joining you, I always want to stand up. I find that my energy is different. The energy that I'm able to give to whatever I'm doing is different when I'm standing versus when I'm sitting. So I always stand up when I'm presenting or teaching or leading. I'm running far too many things here. It's a little silly, to be perfectly honest with you, but I've got a Mac Studio over here, and I've got a MacBook Pro over here, the both M1s. And the reason I've done that is I use the studio really as my streaming device. So I only use on this Ecamm Live and Zoom. That's pretty much
Okay.
it. And
Okay.
then all of my content, if I'm sharing a keynote or if I'm sharing a website, that I do over here on this computer. And that way I ensure that the load is, I'm not overburdened, even though the studio could probably handle 10 times more than I would ever throw at it. I can be assured that, I'm going to have a solid experience. I do have another Mac Mini down here that if I'm doing some production work, I may run my Zoom ISO over there and then bring it in. But basically I got those two computers. I've got my A10 Mini with 1, 2, 3 cameras going into it, and then an Apple TV. I stole this from Alex, the Apple TV idea. So I plugged my Apple TV into it, an old Apple TV I had around, and then I use the Shoot app, so I'm able to wirelessly use my phone to bring in if I want to show something. I'm rocking the 3 Stream Decks here. I'm a Stream Deck maniac. Love those. Yeah, and then for audio, I'm got the Hi PR40, and next week I think my new Rodecaster Pro 2 is gonna arrive, and I'm both really excited about that and also terrified because I have no idea how my audio is set up. I did it in after hours with Carl actually, and I mean, there's just no way I could ever replicate what he did. So I'm positive that new toy is going to come. I'm going to unplug everything, and no one's going to be able to hear me forever. So it's really good that we got this conversation in now, because next week it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat in terms of I have the Hi PR40 microphone as well, and it goes in the Zoom H6. But I also have audio hijack and loopback, and Mickey and Klala, they are the reasons why I have it. It works, and I have the delay so that my sync and everything is the way it ought to be. And so when my mouth is moving, you are hearing the sound. But if I had to explain it,
right,
I would be in trouble.
I agree with you 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So
and, I will say about my setup here that it's ridiculous. It's I don't need any of this stuff. Having said that, the way I've set this up allows me to not only look my best and sound my best, but it allows me to be the most helpful. In really powerful ways. If I need to share that website, because I've got this thing right here, I can just jump right over to it. I don't have to worry about it. If I want to go full screen, if I want to I have things set up in such a way that I can really do some powerful things. Alex loves the telestration thing, and so I've got that set up here. If I want to teach people, and this isn't about showing off. It really isn't. It's about being able to be the most helpful. And so the way I've set my desk area up, my studio up, is what is going to help. What are the tools that are going to help me be the most helpful to other people, so that they can do their best. And I'm really proud of what I've put together and how it's helped me do this and have so much fun along the way.
Yeah, I look at it as paying tuition for continued lifelong learning, and that's why I I don't need all of what I have either. And my wife reminds me of it very often that I don't. It doesn't take all of that, but it is, as you say, a way in which you are can be more helpful, and also it for me it's an opportunity to continue to learn and to continue to get better.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I just like the toys. I really
Yeah.
do.
Oh, sure. Of course. I have shiny
but
thing syndrome, just like everyone
but
else. Yeah.
but it does just some of the things that you can do that are so cutting edge. And I think that technology can inform the worship experience. Like when you're using the telestrator, yeah, that can be, used in a traditional classroom setting, but it also can be used in a worship experience where there's biblical studies going on, and
Yeah.
you can demonstrate on the fly. You can just do it right there on the screen. Who would have thought that you could, just start writing on your camera as you're talking
That's
about?
right. That's right.
And so
You,
the things that we can do with Keynote and be live video on with Keynote and so on. And so
and
it's
you know,
just an amazing journey.
it's one of the tremendous ironies of the past 2 years and the pandemic in particular is that while we have all felt the distance from other human beings when we were locked in our homes, the technologies have actually created a strange new intimacy that we can't have in a large sanctuary, right? If I go
Mm,
into the sanctuary in my temple, if I'm sitting in the fourth, fifth, sixth row, I can't see the facial expressions of the rabbi or the cantor. I can't see the Torah scroll as it's being read because it's way up on the stage, on the I don't know what you call it in English, the podium, the bima is the Hebrew word. It's way up there. So I'm in the room, I'm physically there, but the experience that I have isn't nearly as intimate as if I'm watching on a screen and the rabbi is right there, or the preacher is right, and you can see my face, you can see my expressions, and maybe there's another camera that's looking directly at the scroll, and maybe as we're reading it, as you said, someone is telestrating and showing. I mean, we can create such different and vibrant experiences. They don't replace the ones in the sanctuary. I'm not at all suggesting that we not go
right.
back to church and synagogue, but the experiences are different. And in some ways, they're even more intimate, even though we're sitting alone in front of a computer. It's a very interesting irony, I think, that we have that we've learned in the past couple of years.
So I want to get Liberty White has a question for us, but before that, I want you to quickly just talk about the technology, the hardware part that you are
Sure.
sharing with some of the congregations.
Sure. So again, there are different. Some are out in the stratosphere, and they're grabbing PTZ, the pan-tilt zoom cameras, bird dogs, things like that. They're putting those up, routing those over Ethernet into vMix machines, things like that. That's fantastic. That's not really. I can't be all that helpful there. I'm just not that knowledgeable. For the mid tiers, that's kind of where I live, and what I'm trying to help congregations do is find the right technology for their goals. So if their goal is to create a an experience where everyone can be seen, both the people who are on site and online, then the owl camera may be a good solution for them. Now, the owl camera doesn't have great video quality. The audio isn't fantastic. It is not the right solution for a whole bunch of scenarios. But if their goal is about a small group physically gathered and then everyone being able to be seen, that may be the right solution for them. If instead they're creating more of a frontal experience, and they aren't mounting cameras and running them into switchers, I might suggest the Facebook Portal TV. For $100, you get a not terrible experience that shoots right out to Zoom land. Pop that on top of a TV. It'll actually follow you. It's motion tracking. So, and now I know you and I were probably really excited about the announcement from Apple about you just plop your phone on top of your computer and all of a sudden you've got your amazing phone camera as your webcam. So, I spend a lot of time helping communities find not cheap, but reasonable and effective solutions, and most importantly, meaningful and helpful hardware, most importantly, that will help them reach their goals. For me, I'm not interested in just outfitting synagogues with cameras and microphones. I want to know, what's your goal? What are you trying to accomplish? And then what are the right tools to help you accomplish that?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi David, for that. We have a question from Liberty White, and it's coming in from YouTube. When researching a telestrator bug in my workflow, Rabbi David Paskin's video came up in my results. Thank you. Question: I don't know if I missed it, but how did Ecamm become his streaming tool of choice?
I think it became my streaming tool of choice because I tried OBS. And what I mean by that is, God bless the people who made and work with OBS. Again, it's only because they're smarter than I am. I couldn't get it to work for me. I do really great. If you give me a bunch of products, I can put them together and make something really beautiful. But if you want me to engineer the actual components, that I can't do. And so OBS felt to me like engineering the components. Like it felt like, I don't know, it didn't feel Apple-y. I guess that's the way to, Microsoft to me also feels like, it's engineering, whereas Apple's that finished, polished product. And Ecamm is in many ways a finished, polished project, although it is constantly evolving. They are always changing it. And so it's sort of a simple, this is the Ecamm window. You've got these nice panels here. It's laid out very simply. You can turn panels off if you don't need them. You can turn them on if you do need them. It's very, very user-friendly. And probably the best part is the community. And I imagine that OBS has this also, but I'm in the Ecamm world. So the community is just fantastic. If you have a problem, if you have a question, you ask it in the community, either their Discord, which is going to be opening up in a couple weeks to the public, or in their Facebook group, and you just get an answer like that. And the last thing I'll say is that, I mentioned before that my brother works at Google. So I was a Mac user for years. And then maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I decided my entire life is in the Googleverse. Google Drive, Google Photos, Gmail, Calendar, literally everything lives in Google. And so 5 or 6 years ago, I decided, why am I using Mac? They had just come out with really solid Chromebooks, not the first iteration, not the CR, whatever that was, 48, but the first Pixelbook or something came out. And I said, why would, if I live in the Googleverse, why wouldn't I just use Google hardware? So I got rid of all my Macs and I bought the Pixelbook and an Android phone. And I used that up until 2 years ago. And then the pandemic hit and I had to start doing video. And I realized how crummy Chromebooks are for video because you can't download anything on them. So that's when I went back to Mac, and Ecamm is one of, I guess, 2 major platforms that is built for video streaming on the Mac. And that's where I ended up. And I love it. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, I would just add that the Ecamm community is extremely helpful, particularly on Facebook. And I've played around with it a few times. But what I'm doing right now with my church, it's kind of overkill.
Yeah.
But that we might get there one day.
No, I
Where we
think you're
can
right. And I don't recommend it to a lot of synagogues because for the exact reason you just said, because it is overkill. Sometimes I'll just suggest, if all they're doing is wanting to have 2 or 3 camera shots, grab yourself an ATEM Mini and you're done. Right? You got your 4 big buttons there. I have one here, and I don't think I've ever pressed any of the small buttons. I press the 4 big buttons, and that's all I do. Or even something like Cinemaker, which is just, again, you get kind of your 4 inputs there, and you can just switch your camera. So no, if you don't need all this stuff, I agree with you. It is overkill.
And I'll let you know, Cinemaker has now moved to 8 cameras, not 4.
I know. Yep. And they've got
Yeah,
that thick connection with Zoom, which is pretty sweet. But
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Looks like Liberty is back again. And she says, Rabbi, I am inspired. I like to stand to when teaching, but haven't taken the steps to get a standing desk yet.
I got to tell you, Liberty, I started with, one of those, it has the handles on both sides, and you put it on top of your desk and then it just kind of lifts up. I started with that, but then as I showed you before, I quickly grew with too many things I needed to clamp to it. So that wasn't working anymore. This one, this is probably from Walmart or something. I mean, this is not a good desk by any stretch of the imagination. But if you get enough Elgato and Manfrotto clamps and you just clamp everything to it, it's one of those electric ones. So I just, I have it set for when I stand up and for when I sit down. I also got, those mats that you put in front of your kitchen sink so that your feet don't hurt. So I put one of those down on the floor. And yeah, I'm with you, Liberty, 100%. One of the things that I talk with congregations about is that if you expect to take what you've been doing in your sanctuaries and just shove a camera in front of that, and for that experience to be just as meaningful online, you're setting yourself up for disappointment, because there is a physical chemical energy when 2 human beings are in the same space. And that chemical energy does not exist in digital space because we are not in the same physical space. So we need to change the energy. We need to kick up the energy level. It's almost like if you watch if you go to Broadway, or even if your kids are doing a show, the makeup is always what's the word? Not exacerbated.
Exaggerated.
Yeah, thank you. Exaggerated, because you won't see it otherwise. And so that's what we have to do when it comes to energy, when we're teaching, when we're leading. We have to bring up that energy. And for me, at least, one important component of that is there's no way I can slouch back in my chair. I'm standing up and I'm fully present.
Okay. And Douglas Carmichael is here with, do you think worship can be entertaining without losing its gravitas and decorum?
Yeah. Douglas, what a fantastic question. I'm probably the wrong person to ask about this because I poo-poo all over decorum. I have no interest in decorum whatsoever. It feels fake to me. I'm much more interested in authentic experiences. And if those are entertaining, so be it. If they're full of gravitas, beautiful. But forcing decorum or a heaviness because we think that that's what religion should be like feels very fake to me. I don't know if you've seen the movie Keeping the Faith with Ben Affleck. Is it Ben Affleck? No, it's not Ben Affleck. It's oh my goodness, he was in Night at the Museum. What's his name?
Ben Stiller?
Ben Stiller, thank you. Doesn't matter. The story is, if you haven't seen it, Ben Stiller is a rabbi. He's an assistant rabbi in New York. His best friend is a priest, and they're both in love with the same woman. So, I mean, the story is really about this sort of love thing that's going on. But a side piece of the story is this young rabbi is in this big fancy temple in New York, and he is leading services, and he gets to a prayer service, and the tune is the traditional tune is Angelo Hainu. I mean, it really is like you're at a funeral. It's just terrible. The words mean there is no one like you. You're awesome. You're amazing. All about God, right? Go God, rah rah. I mean, it's a cheerleading prayer, and the tune is Angelo Hainu. So in the movie, he brings in a gospel choir to sing this, and they walk in from the Ain Keloheinu, Ain Kadoneinu, and it's like the best prayer ever. You know, they're rocking out. And of course, he then gets in trouble from all of the old folks in the synagogue who's like, what happened to the decorum and the gravitas? God never asked us to be bored. God never asked us to dress up with a suit and be all formal and stuffy and uncomfortable. We did that to ourselves. And again, I'm probably the wrong person to answer this, Douglas, but I got to tell you, I just don't buy any of that. I just don't. I just want to sing. I want to thank God. I want to be grateful. I want to be frustrated sometimes. It's not all flowers and puppies and unicorns. Like sometimes life sucks. I get that. But I want to be able to scream at God. I want to be able to pray. And I don't want to have to worry about if I have a tie on or if I'm being formal enough or if I'm showing enough decorum. When I was a congregational rabbi, parents would always apologize if their kids made noise. And I said, what are you apologizing for? That is the most beautiful prayer I've heard all day. I wish you would make more noise. I don't think our sanctuaries are loud enough. I'm serious. I don't think they're loud enough because everyone has to be quiet. Here's one last thing, Tony, I promise I'm going to stop after this. There's a thing in synagogues where the rabbi says, when it's time, please rise. And then when it's time to sit, please be seated. That is so silly. Why are you waiting for me to tell you when to stand up? Shouldn't you stand up when you're moved to stand, when you feel lifted up by God? Shouldn't you stand up then? What are you waiting for me to tell you to stand up for? I don't know. So I just don't buy any of that stuff. Just be real. Come pray. Let's have some fun together.
We have so many more questions, but we have run out of time. So I'm going to ask.
This was so much fun, Tony. This was so much fun.
I agree. I
love you, brother. I love you.
I appreciate you too, brother, and I love you too. And I have like 3 questions that I want to ask, but more importantly, I want the singing rabbi to share with us before we end. And as you're getting ready, the last question that I'm going to ask tonight, you're speaking to the world. What do you want them to know?
What do I want them to know? Wow. What do I want them to know? I want them to know that tomorrow can be better than today. And that today, and even though that's true, today is worth celebrating.
That's right.
Tomorrow
Amen.
can be better than today, and today is worth celebrating. It's so trite, but today is a present. It is. It's a gift.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now we're going to hear from the
So wait,
rabbi.
so now I don't know what should we do? Should we do something in Hebrew, something in English? We could do we could do some Green Day, we could do some Rolling Stones, some Beatles. I don't let's see. How about, can you hear that okay, by the way? Is that coming through okay?
They're telling me in the back end, don't get a copyright strike.
No. All right, I'll do one of mine. I'll do one of, actually, mine might be copyrighted also. You know what? I'm just going to do a little nigun. So a nigun,
Okay.
is the guitar coming through okay, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So a nigun is a tune without words. And we do this a lot. You know, when you pray in Hebrew, I'm just tuning my guitar here. When you pray in Hebrew, you end up with a lot of people, if they don't know Hebrew, who don't get to participate. So we spend a lot of time just kind of lying and nine-nine our way through the prayers. And it's one of my favorite things to do. So this is a nigun, a tune without words that I wrote. So that's how it starts. And then there's one line of Hebrew and one line of English. Ready? Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam ulolmei oh maya yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam ulolmei oh maya. And here's what that means. Ready? May God's great name be blessed forever, as long as worlds endure. May God's great name be blessed forever, as long as worlds endure. Ready?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
Rock and roll.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi David. Appreciate
You're
it.
so welcome. Thank
I
you.
wish we could get some more. Our time is up, but thank you again so much for this great conversation. And I'm happy that we had this great conversation.
I am too.
And I'm not going to apologize for our faith talk during this conversation either. And so thank you so much for being with me tonight. And we are going to do our thanks, and special thanks to Kimberly Mobley, Ron Mobley, Global Family and Friends, Alex Lindsay, Office Hour members, DVE Store, Liminal Entertainment Technologies, Byte Hive, VDO360.com, ApprovalLoan.com, Cloudbit Rock LLC, Ken Jordan, Jonas Patel, Aaron Husledge, Cherrick Cheetah, David Brady, Marcus Lee Falk, Richard Lavery, Chris Fenwick, Manuel Lozano, Jeffrey Powers, Bo Cordell, Mickey McAchore, Hazma Gajar, Doug Moeller, Laura Thompson, Brian Chan, Dennis Champion Walker, Roscoe Jones, George Butters, Joshua Menden, Daniel Maxwell, Conversation with Tony Mobley, producer Clark Lopez Waterman, and Adrian, who is running the show tonight. Thank you all so much for all the things that you do and the support of Conversations with Tony Mobley. Again, thank you, Rabbi David Paskin, for our conversation today and for doing the work you do. Conversation with Tony Mobley will continue next week with Mr. George E. Kennedy Jr., professional video production and streaming business owner, and he will be on with me next week. Looking forward to that great conversation. And again, thank you all so much for being with me today. And thank you, team, again, for all of the bells and whistles and all of the great things that we happen to have. And if you're interested in learning on how Conversation with Tony Mobley is being done, I'm going to encourage you to go to the website. You want to learn about how they're using AWS and Amazon, which is AWS, vMix in the cloud, and all of the great tools that they're using to make Conversation with Tony Mobley. I encourage you to go to conversationwithtonymobley.com, and you can fill out a form and ask to be a volunteer, and so that you can figure it out. And Rabbi David, please share your website one more time, please.
Yeah, absolutely. TorahTechGuy.com. TorahTechGuy.com. It's TORAH, techguy.com.
Thank you, sir. Again, really appreciate you, and I love you, brother. Take care, everyone. Good night, good day, good evening. Take care. Bye-bye.